Hi, welcome back to Mel's Health. I'm Mel, and in today's BPA related video, it is basically how I navigated the experience of being referred within Canada and not living anywhere near the hospital that provides the surgeries. In Canada, the procedures are carried out at Toronto General, which is the east of the country. And looking online, there is actually potentially a place in Montreal too, but that's also east. So if you're located anywhere else in this enormous country, you're gonna have to travel pretty far to get the treatment. As I said before, I live on the very west coast of Canada, so it's the complete opposite side of the country to where these treatments are being offered. So when I was looking to be booked in for these surgeries, I had to begin navigating what that looks like. So today is just some insight into the logistics of receiving BPA in Toronto as a non-local patient, which includes planning the schedule with the surgeon, what's the best way to get there, where to stay, how to find the hospital, including the admit ward on the first day, what it looks inside of the operating room and the hospital wards themselves, just to help alleviate any of those extra anxieties you may have. Right, so it all begins with the surgeon's opinion on how many BPA treatments he estimates will be needed for your particular case. But obviously the reason why this is step one is because you need to know the schedule so that you can then plan the travel. And when I spoke to Dr. Maffeld on the phone from Toronto, he said to me 4 sessions over 2 weeks. So the way he works with out of province patients or patients that have to travel a really long way to get to Toronto General is to book the treatments close together to avoid multiple trips. They do these surgeries on Thursdays and Fridays in Toronto. So for me, they book 2 weeks in a row. So I would be admitted on the Thursday morning, go in for the surgery, then be taken up to the ward overnight. Again, Friday morning, go in for another surgery and repeat, be in the ward again overnight until being discharged at some point early afternoon on the Saturday, all being well. This is then repeated the following week. So for the 4 days in between, the Sunday to the Wednesday, you need to stay close by in Toronto with your support person or people, and then once the second week is complete, you are free to travel home. It is recommended that you stay close by for like 24 to 48 hours after the final surgery, just in case of any issues. So in my case, we flew back on the Sunday. So once you've got your schedule kind of locked in, that's when you can start looking at travel. So traveling from the west coast to Toronto, it's a long old way. So flying for us is the most sensible option. It's around about a 5-hour flight, but the total travel day from door to door is around 12 hours. Obviously, this is the first point of where all the expenses start. So to keep the nights of travel to a minimum, we booked flights to arrive the day before the first surgery. So our travel day was the Wednesday, ready to go in for admission on the Thursday morning. And then, as I just said before, we flew back the following Sunday, which meant for an 11-night stay in Toronto. Next up, and one of the biggest things that goes as part of this planning, is the accommodation. So even though you yourself are going to be spending a couple nights per week in the hospital, you have to have your support person with you for when you're discharged, and it's good to just have them around as a support network anyway. So you are going to need to look for somewhere to stay for the entire time. So in our case, we were looking for the 11-night stay in Toronto somewhere. Now, I'm not going to go specific into like what certain things cost, because depending on the time of year that you go, I think there's going to be a lot of differentiation with it being a major city. I happened to be there in the absolute height of summer, so I think I probably paid a bit of a premium. But there's 2 options you can go through when looking at accommodation options, because Toronto is very used to having patients having to go there for a whole range of specialist treatments. So the 2 options are you either inquire with local hotels, or you can go through a local charity for an apartment. So the local hotels offer a lot of long stay and patient rates that are going to be very hidden on their website, so you have to reach out directly. The second option is the charity Staywell, and this is the option that we ended up going with. They have connections to a lot of rental apartments in the city, and once you fill in their online inquiry form about which hospital you're going to and your date range and how many rooms you're going to need, they will send you an email with a bunch of information so you can pick the right place for you based on the rooms, the location, and the price point. The apartments they had were all nice places and very close to the hospital, literally like a 5-minute walk. It's your typical city centre, high-rise style 2-bed apartment with like a real small balcony, just in the absolute heart of downtown Toronto. So it's pretty ideal because you're close to the hospital, you can walk around the town and get to all the shops and amenities and restaurants pretty easily as well. As part of this planning, I will also say that you should also pre-plan the logistics of getting to where you're staying from the airport. In hindsight, my husband and I just wish we had continued to Uber throughout the entire trip to get from the airport to where we were staying, because that's what we did on the way out. But on the first day, we decided to try and navigate the metro, and with luggage, after traveling and not having a clue where we were going most of the time, it just made it a little bit more stressful and a lot more tiring, including the point where we got off at the wrong stop and then had to walk pretty far to find our apartment as well. So I'd say either meticulously plan those logistics or just Uber it. Okay, and to wrap up, my final little tip for the pre-trip planning is to do with actually when you're packing. So not just your hospital bag, but your clothes for when you are there. Now, I'm not going to literally go into depth and tell you what you should be wearing, but I just wanted to add a reminder in here to think about what you're wearing after the surgeries, especially on those days in between and for your travel home. And this is because you're going to have the incisions in your groin, and you don't want to be wearing any clothes that are going to aggravate that incision site for a few days afterwards. So in my case, I took a pair of shorts and a pair of jeans that were a size or two too big so that they would be baggy around the groin area. As I said, I was in Toronto in the height of summer, so it was absolutely swelteringly hot. But depending on the weather when you're there, you want to think about when you're out and about doing things on your days in between, or even just lazing around the place that you're staying. You don't want to have anything aggravating that incision site while it's healing. And then secondly, with your hospital bag, you are basically like bed bound for those 2 days that you're, or 2.5 days that you're in there. So you're going to want some entertainment in your bag and the power for said entertainment if it requires it. So for me, I had a laptop, headphones and my phone, and I just made sure that I had chargers for all of those. All right, moving on to the actual hospital side of things. So I took some videos of signs to look out for when you're trying to find that admit area and stuff on the first day. So you'll be told and you'll be given written instructions and a mini map to go to the Peter Monk building as part of Toronto General. And what they said to me, both in writing and on the phone, was to go to the entrance that has the Tim Hortons. Now, I thought it was going to be way more obvious than it was, but I didn't see Timmy's until the very last minute, and I would kind of got my bearings all out of place, and I didn't head straight to the admit area on the first day. So I think if you're someone who's already a little bit anxious around all of this happening, trying to get there on time and everything, this is probably going to just be a nice visual so that you've got in your mind that this is where you're heading to. So when you're heading there, you will see these signs, and it does say Peter Monk on the outside of the building, which is a good start. Depending on the direction you're coming from, you will see the giant heart picture on the side of one of the buildings. We always saw it from the way of the reflection in the glass, which I thought was quite nice. And then once you hit this entrance, you will see here that you walk up this little few steps. You just keep going completely straight, and then dead in front of you, actually behind that back wall, is where the Tim Hortons is. So if you reach Timmy's, you've gone too far. You want to be looking for this sign that says medical imaging, and then you head to the right down that corridor. And then once you get to that desk, that is where you are admitted from. So you can go there, check in with your ID, and they will give you your hospital wristband. And then they will tell you that you can go to the medical imaging waiting area, which is really easy to find because you just follow a yellow line along the floor and it takes you straight there. Now that you've made it to that point, you are going to be talked through everything step by step by the staff that come out to greet you and bring you into the gurney area. But I can still give you a sneak peek of what to expect because you have your phone with you the entire time. So you're taken into the next area, and this is where your support person, companion, whoever has to leave. They aren't brought into this next area, but they take you through, and there's a whole row of gurneys with bed numbers, and this is where you start getting prepped. So you will change into your gown, and then you put all your belongings in a bag in a locker, and it corresponds to your bed. So if you're in bed 6, go to locker 6, but they will tell you which one. You're also given these fetching blue surgical slippers, which make your feet look like dinosaur claws. And on the first couple of days, I also had a lovely hairnet. It's not the best look. At this point, you're then starting the ultra prep. So you're IV'd up, you've got your pulse ox and your BP cuff and the stickies on you for the EKG that's going to be going during the surgery. So you're just completely all prepped up, ready to be wheeled in. You're having some chats with the staff about stuff. They're doing all of the checks that they need to do. And then Dr. Maffeld usually comes out as well and has a chat with you before going in, explaining what's going to happen and answer any questions you might have last minute. So that you can easily keep your loved ones informed, they do allow you to have your phone with you all the time. So even though all of my belongings were put in the bag in the locker, I had my phone with me the entire time. even in the surgical room, so it was kept on my bed the entire time whilst I was in there. After being wheeled in, on multiple occasions throughout these 4 times, I was then left to my own devices for quite a while whilst they were setting things up and having their morning meeting and getting things all prepped for the session. So I did what you do in this day and age, and I documented the room that I was in, and I'm really sorry if I wasn't supposed to do this, but I don't remember seeing any pictures telling me not to film. But here is what the surgical room looks like. And from there, the surgery happens. You go through the process, and I've talked about that separately in my little FaceTime chat video, and I am going to do a bit more of an in-depth video as well around like the incision sites I had, just like images during the recovery and stuff, but that will be a separate video. But once all that has happened, you're then wheeled back out into that like gurney area where the journey just began. And then once you're deemed well enough, they will take you up to the ward where you're going to spend the night. So I got wheeled up and I was on the ward for thoracics and respirology. And I don't know if there's any other wards that they take people to, but this was the ward that I was on for both of the weeks that I was in there. And I was even placed in the exact same spot. So same room, same bed space. Apparently my room was a bit of an older one because it didn't have like a shower bathroom in there. Apparently the others have been kind of modded to have like a full-on bathroom area. But here is where I bed rotted for my admission time, just your typical hospital room that was shared with one other patient. And from what I could see, pretty much every room had 2 patients in. So this is then treated just like any regular hospital ward. So if you've got any visitors or if your support person can come and see you, then you can have some company up until I think about 9 o'clock at night. So it's quite late. Maybe they can bring you some snacks and some other things depending on how you're feeling. But yeah, I hope that kind of gives you some good insight into BPAs in Toronto. I always know that like actually seeing some things visually and having that in your mind before you go can just like take the edge off some of the fear of the unknown. So if there's anything else that you can think of that you might want to see that I could have potentially documented during my time there, if you have any questions, if you're off to Toronto, then do let me know. But other than that, I will see you on the next one. Thanks, bye.